Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be diving in.
Our mission here, well, it's simple. We take the sources you've shared, dig through them, and pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the key insights.
Yeah, we're basically giving you a shortcut to being well-informed, cutting through all the noise.
So you can grasp the core ideas without, getting totally buried in the details.
Exactly. Think of us as your guides, helping you spot the connections, figure out what's really significant in all this information you have.
Finding those little aha moments, maybe?
Hopefully, those things that stick with you.
And today's deep dive is definitely a fascinating one. We're looking at excerpts from a YouTube video.
Right, it's titled Wijana na Blusi Okusis Wija Live from Jasnowidzi Krzysztof Jackowski Official.
So this source, it's all about visions, predictions for upcoming events.
Mostly, yeah. A big focus on Polish politics, but it also touches on some wider global things, too.
And it's presented kind of like a live stream, him sharing impressions.
Exactly. It feels quite immediate conversational.
Okay, so kicking things off, the source creator mentioned something interesting right away, a personal observation.
Oh, yeah, about the full moon.
Uh-huh. He says, based on like 30 years of experience, he feels the full moon connects to visions, makes them feel brighter, more brilliant.
So brighter or more brilliant. It definitely sets a unique context for everything that follows, doesn't it?
Grounding it in his personal intuition, maybe linked to natural cycles.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack what this source is saying. Before looking forward, it mentions the past, claims some predictions already happened.
Yes, exactly. There's a key claim about a prediction from last September. It concerns the current elected president.
Okay, and what did that prediction involve, according to the source?
Well, the source states he predicted the president would be physically strong.
Physically strong, okay.
Yeah, and not someone widely known as a politician, sort of a newcomer to the big leagues.
Uh-huh, someone new.
And that this person would be chosen by the people. The claim is basically that this profile pretty accurately describes the president who actually got elected.
Right. But then here's where it gets, well, a bit more controversial, I suppose.
You mean the traitor part?
Exactly. The source also claims to have predicted this same president would be a traitor.
Yeah, that's the word used. A very strong word. But it's important. He qualifies it almost immediately.
How so?
The source creator explains that even with this difficult vision, he personally voted for that president.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and he explicitly told his viewers, don't make a simplistic judgment just based on that word traitor. Follow your own conscience. Though he also says he absolutely doesn't agree with betrayal itself.
So he presents the vision, but wraps it in, like, personal complexity and tells people to think for themselves.
Pretty much. It's like, here's this vision, wrestle with it, don't just accept it as a simple label.
Okay. The source also briefly touches on a past case, doesn't it?
Right. Just quickly. An anecdote about a local vision years back in Poznan.
What was that about?
He claims that during a vision for a murder case, he actually identified the murderer to the victim's husband, just shared as a kind of example from his past work.
Gotcha. Okay, moving on to the visions for the nearest period of time. What's the first big thing that comes up? Globally, maybe?
The first major vision described is pretty unsettling. A large passenger plane burning in the air.
Wow, okay. Does it mention where?
It gives a few possibilities, maybe near the Balkans or central Italy, around the Adriatic Sea.
Uh-huh.
But it also kind of hedges, saying it could be further away, too.
Yeah.
Like South America or parts of Africa.
Yeah.
So specific locations mentioned, but also an awareness it could be elsewhere.
And speaking of South America, there was another vision link there.
Yes. The source connects South America with a major cataclysm.
Like what?
Potentially an earthquake, followed by a big tsunami. And, well, the vision carries this feeling that many people might die. A very somber possibility.
Right. Beyond these, like, specific dramatic events, the source also talks about a general feeling about the world right now.
Yeah, it's almost philosophical, a sense that events are unfolding in a way that's insidious towards ordinary people.
Insidious. How so?
Well, it's tied to this idea that people are just too chaotic, too overwhelmed, maybe too distracted to really see what's happening or to unite against it. The source uses this really striking phrase, saying people are acting as if they were possessed.
Possessed? By what?
Maybe just by all the noise, the chaos, the distractions. It forms this kind of backdrop for the more political predictions that come next.
Okay, right. Let's zero in on those then. the Polish political scene, starting with the president, who the source calls Noraki. What's foreseen for him?
Right, this is where it gets pretty detailed. One of the first things predicted is about reports, or maybe documents, being prepared for him almost immediately after he takes office.
Documents, what kind?
The source predicts he's going to present these documents to politicians from the current ruling coalition, civic platform, and their allies. And crucially, these documents are supposed to be inconvenient for them, maybe even compromising, suggesting they might reveal something, well, damaging.
And what about his style? How is he predicted to act as president?
Unusually relaxed is the feeling. The source thinks he'll intentionally kind of downplay the formal presidential stuff, the etiquette.
To seem more approachable.
Yeah, aiming for this open, simple appearance. What the source calls luz, like an ease or casualness, to connect with people directly.
And this focus on connection, it seems linked to a bigger goal.
Definitely. The idea of rebuilding national trust. That's key.
Yeah.
The source predicts he'll actively work on this, taking quick, strong actions.
Aimed at uniting the Polish nation.
Yeah, trying to unite people, even if, full unity seems unlikely. That's the predicted goal.
Is there any specific international focus mentioned?
Yes, an intensive dialogue specifically with Hungary and its leader, Orban.
Interesting choice.
The source sees the president initiating this contact, reaching out to Orban, who often takes a different path within the EU.
Okay. And how is his approach predicted to be towards, say, the media or the current government?
Very unpredictable. That's the main word used.
And strangely, this unpredictability, it helps him, according to the source.
Yeah, that's the prediction. Paradoxically, this very unpredictability will lead to him gaining trust from people. The phrase used is nabierzofania.
So he builds confidence by being unpredictable.
That's the idea. It's seen as this counterintuitive way he'll connect.
And the source interprets this behavior, right? The style, the connection focus.
Right. It's seen as him basically acting like he's still campaigning, trying to win people over even after the election, and doing this sort of subliminal work for PiS, the main opposition party, and its allies.
Why would he be doing that so early on? Is there a reason given?
Well, the speculation in the source is that maybe he anticipates elections happening sooner than scheduled.
Ah, okay. So he's getting ready strategically.
That's the suggestion. Preparing the ground, perhaps.
Now, his strategy towards the current ruling coalition, it's not just straight opposition, is it?
No, the source suggests it's more subtle than that. Not direct confrontation.
So what does he do?
He's predicted to, cunningly compromise them by highlighting their oversights and neglect.
In what areas?
The source points to things like healthcare, maybe other social issues, places where he can draw attention to what the current government is supposedly failing at.
And how does he handle the big players in the coalition, the main politicians?
The prediction is he'll outplay them, not just on policy, but with brilliance or quick wit.
Making it stressful for them.
Causing them psychological stress, yeah. That's the term used.
And there's another significant element predicted for him.
Oh, right. A strong return to Polish roots, traditions, both national and religious. That's seen as a big part of his approach.
And what's the predicted immediate effect of all this? His style, his moves?
In the early phase, the source thinks he'll win over a lot of people who maybe weren't convinced before.
And that's bad news for the coalition.
Directly, yes. The prediction is this will harm the coalition parties, causing them to lose support as he gains it.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. The current ruling coalition and the Prime Minister, Tusk. What does the source see for them?
Well, a big prediction involves the European Union. The source feels the EU is going to strike a blow. The phrase used is zada Tuskowisios, against the coalition.
A blow.
By slowing down funds meant for Poland, or maybe withholding them altogether under some kind of pretext.
And how would that be received?
Very negatively by the coalition government, according to the prediction. A major setback.
And more generally, is the coalition seen as stable?
Not really. The source describes this whole period as a bad time for Tusk, and it doesn't seem to be ending. Significant instability is the feeling.
Is there a specific time frame when this instability might peak?
Yeah, the source points to the possibility of the coalition actually disassembling, breaking down. Specifically mentions September, October this year, with October maybe being the more decisive point.
Could internal issues cause that, like within the coalition itself?
Yes, the source senses a possibility of betrayal from inside.
Betrayal.
Like maybe one or two parties within the coalition getting quiet offers or proposals from somewhere else. hints of shifting allegiances that could just pull it apart.
Uh-huh.
The overall feeling from the source is just that the coalition's losing steam after the presidential election, and that this President Iraqi, with his style, is going to actively pull their support base away.
And what about Tusk himself, the prime minister? Is his position safe in all this?
The source shares this strong feeling that Tusk might actually consider resigning voluntarily at some point.
Really? Stepping down?
It's presented as something he might have in mind as an option, especially if the coalition looks like it's in real trouble or losing a lot of support.
So, like, getting out before it collapses completely.
That's kind of the interpretation offered,
Yeah.
The source feels September might bring talks about the coalition ending, October could be decisive, and maybe Tusk wants to exit before the whole thing dissolves.
Okay. Stepping away from the internal stuff for a moment, what about Poland's relationship with Ukraine? Anything predicted there?
Yes, quite specifically. A predicted strong conflict between President Iraqi and the leader of Ukraine,
Over what?
centered on the historical issue of Wuya. That's a very sensitive, tragic history between Poland and Ukraine. Raising that would definitely cause conflict.
A major verbal clash is predicted then.
Exactly. Between the two leaders.
And does the source suggest why this conflict might happen? What purpose it serves?
Yeah, the source states this intense argument over Wuyu is predicted to give President Iraqi a pretext.
A pretext for what?
To step back from offering unconditional support to Ukraine, to detach somewhat.
And is his general stance towards Ukraine predicted?
Yes, quite explicitly. The source states the president is predicted not to be pro-Ukrainian.
Okay. Looking even further ahead now, any glimpses into a more distant future?
Just brief mentions. A vision about a future changed government.
A changed government. Doing what?
The predictions linked to that future government include things like territorial annexations and implementing strange regulations. That's foreseen under this later structure.
Let's loop back to that really difficult idea, the president being a traitor. How does the source connect that to these future predictions?
Right. This is a very specific interpretation in the source.
Yeah.
The suggestion is, if this president, Naraki, betrays, it won't be through action, but through silence.
Silence.
Mycenium nastadratsi, he will betray us by silence. The idea is that someone else will bring in these tough laws or annexations under that future government.
He won't stop them.
Exactly. He's predicted not to use his power, maybe his veto power, to prevent it, even though he could.
Almost like a washing his hands of it.
The source uses that exact comparison. Like Pontius Pilate, he'll wash his hands, letting these potentially bad future events happen through his inaction. That's the predicted betrayal.
Wow. Okay. The source also had a couple of other observations, right, that didn't quite fit the political track. One was about the world hating Poland.
Yeah, and interestingly, the source creator kind of pushed back on that.
No.
He suggested Poles are actually received pretty well when they travel. He felt maybe it's Poles themselves who sometimes seem, I don't know, grumpy. Or maybe they've just been taught political hostility towards each other. Not that the world hates Poland.
Interesting take. And there was also something about Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Yes, just a feeling the source had.
Oh.
That Musk and Trump are seriously on the outs right now. Like on knives with each other, was the phrase. A real falling out.
Any idea why? Did the source speculate?
Yeah, a bit. Wondering what Musk might know. Maybe something about Poland and Ukraine. Or perhaps about Trump's stance towards Putin.
Which the source sees as maybe too lenient.
Yeah, perceived as maybe too accommodating. That's the speculation.
And there was one more strong feeling about Trump, related to corporations.
Oh, right. A very strong sense presented in the source that Trump believes corporations are actively turning people into zombies.
Zombies, seriously.
That's the word used. And furthermore, that Musk knows this is happening. Knows about this effect.
That really connects back to that earlier point, doesn't it? The world feeling insidious, people being overwhelmed.
It absolutely does. It ties into this bigger idea shared in the source, that there are really only two fundamental forces at play on Earth, described simply as clean and unclean. And current events, including this idea of corporations turning people into zombies, are seen as these insidious tools working against ordinary people.
And the people are too distracted to notice.
Exactly. Living in such noise and chaos. They're portrayed as too overwhelmed, too divided to find time to think, to unite, or to resist what's happening, which leads back to that feeling of them acting as if they were possessed.
Right. So pulling all this together from our deep dive into this specific source, Wow, we've covered quite a range.
Definitely. From those dramatic global warnings, the burning plane, the tsunami, to really detailed predictions about Polish politics.
Oh, yeah. The president's predicted style, his strategy, the potential fragility of the current coalition, that foreseen conflict over Wuyo.
And then looking even further out, those glimpses of a future government, potential annexations, and that really complex, unsettling idea of betrayal through silence.
And just to reiterate, our goal here was really to understand and lay out the points made in this specific source, the video we looked at.
Exactly. Presenting the predictions and interpretations shared by the creator.
It paints a picture, certainly, of a world, and one nation in particular, facing potentially huge upheaval, complex challenges.
It does.
So given that pervasive feeling of overwhelming, maybe insidious events that the source describes, and these specific, often dramatic political predictions, here's a final thought, something for you to maybe mull over.
Okay.
In a world that feels, increasingly chaotic, increasingly divided, what does it actually mean for you to try and make sense of the future, using whatever information comes your way?
That's definitely something to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive.